My name is Brent Gimpel, and I'm a director leading our transformation assurance practice at PwC here in Adelaide. I've spent the last 20 years helping organizations deliver and navigate technology, business, and people change to effectively achieve their outcomes. I'm a creator, builder, and believer in innovation and relentless experimentation. At PwC, we focus on the journey, not just the destination, which means we value care. We work together, we work to make a difference, to reimagine a tomorrow that impacts important societal agendas. PwC is a long-term sponsor of the IPAA, working with the South Australian government, businesses, and the community to effect real lasting change. At PwC, we acknowledge that one of the ways which we can demonstrate our respects to the traditional owners is by learning the local language. We recognize acknowledgement of country is a diplomatic protocol within Aboriginal culture that has existed for around 60,000 years. Mani na budni, nalu tumpundi, nalu gana yautunga imbarendi, nalu tumpundi gana marena puru parana. We welcome everybody. We acknowledge we meet on Ghana land, and we celebrate the Ghana people who are alive today. Welcome to IPAA Stream as part of today's Southstart conference. I would also like to welcome the chief executives from state government and representatives from PwC and Flinders University. I would like to acknowledge our impressive speakers today, which I'll be introducing to you soon. Now, some housekeeping items. Please place your mobile phones on silent. Please follow the signs outside the room to find the toilets. If there's an emergency and we need to evacuate, follow the staff as they lead us outside. We would appreciate if you don't leave the room while people are presenting. And if you do need to leave, please exit between presenters. And now I'm going to invite our first guest up, Erma Rainieri, appointed in 2004 Commissioner for the Public Sector Employment. 2014. Thank you. Correction, one of many. She works passionately at creating a world-leading public sector that serves South Australians well and does what it says it will do, and to which every public servant is proud to belong. Emma leads reform to modernize the public sector, building on its value and service to the South Australian community. Emma has worked for more than 30 years to help organizations optimize productivity and employee well-being. As the 2014 Telstra Businesswoman of the Year, the SA winner of the Telstra Community and Government Award for her role in leading transformational change throughout the public sector, with a focus on flexibility, leadership development, and to ensure the public sector is positioned as an employer of choice. Erma continues to challenge cultural and structural barriers to drive innovative, collaborative, and connective services for the community.
I was almost inclined to take my shoes off, but no, I won't do that. It was a wonderful welcome. I also want to acknowledge that we meet on Ghana land today, and I think everyone's making the welcome or acknowledgement more personal. Those of you that know me, I work passionately to help Aboriginal people in particular gain employment and have their rightful place in leadership roles in our South Australian public sector. So for me, it's very personal in terms of what we can all do to actually help First Australians, I guess, take their rightful place where they need to. Look, there's so many speakers. I actually started to list everyone off to welcome them, but you'll be doing that, so I won't worry about it. I do want to make mention of two speakers, not that I'm kind of picking them out, but Charles Landry, there he is. Charles and I have been working very closely together for many, many years, actually, in particular around our 90-day projects and our innovation, but I won't be talking a lot about that, but we'll be bringing in, I guess, why it's important for public sector to be innovative, and actually I see the public sector as an innovator. and an enabler for the sorts of things that we've heard about and have been hearing about with Lot 14. And I also want to welcome Jim Wally, because the Premier just mentioned, well, you haven't got your fighter pilot thing on or whatever. Yeah, come on, Jim. Our chief entrepreneur, and we know you're not getting paid because the Premier made that quite explicit, but I want to also, and I've said to Jim, I'd love to work more closely together about how the public sector kind of almost meshes with what's happening, I think, at Lot 14, and how we can actually help the state, I think, become what it can be if we're all working closely together. Those of you that know me know that I love the public sector, and I know that it actually plays a significant role in the economic and social well-being of South Australia, and it's just how we submerge and work together. So I'll go into my speech, but I'll be bringing in some things about how we've got to the point that we have in terms of, probably being one of the most innovative state government departments across the nation. And I know that because I meet with my colleagues, and there are some people from interstate here. And I think we're small enough to be able to kind of agitate a bit. So let me start by saying great things in business are never done by one person. They're done by a team of people. This is a quote from Steve Jobs, and whilst most of you might not know the quote, but you would know Steve Jobs. And I think because we're talking about technology, it's how do we think about life prior to Apple or Google or smartphones? It's actually a way of life, and it makes our life a lot easier. But at one point, Apple was just a small idea, but it was the idea that drove Steve Jobs, and I talk a lot about purpose and actually the sort of leadership that's required to drive change. It was an idea that arose from a clear vision, creativity, hard work, collaboration, and technical ability. It's actually making sure that we acknowledge all those parts, but playing together. These are the key words that made it happen, basically, in revolutionising the product and creating a global brand. It's hard for public sector to create a global brand, but we do become important to a whole lot of people in this state. Steve Jobs was an entrepreneur who was ahead of the technological game, and when Apple was just an idea, he was ahead of his time. But what stands out for me in his quote, beyond his awe-inspiring success, is a humbling phrase, a team of people. It endears itself to me in particular because we have a team of over 100,000 public servants, people that work in the public service. They come from diverse working backgrounds, cultures, value sets, upbringings, but we are the largest employer in South Australia. It is my aspiration that we lead the public sector team to work creatively and collaboratively in the future. And we've done that for many, many years. An empowered, agile team that harnesses opportunities. A team that adapts and is open to change and embraces that creativity. And every time I talk to the Premier, we did it again today, I want the public sector to take more risks. And I said, yes, we all do, but we need to work out what sort of leadership's required for people to feel safe to take those risks and what happens to people when they take that risks. So I think that journey of leadership needs to be explored. Now, while Steve Jobs, who pioneered a big four tech company, may seem miles apart from the public service, in my mind we share a commonality, and that is that we put the big picture thinking front and centre. As public servants, we have a responsibility to reflect on the how and why we do things while building trust and confidence in the very community that we serve. To truly serve our growing and very diverse community, we need to grow and adapt our services, which are more in demand than ever, but always under scrutiny. All we have to do is read the paper every day, twice a day. I'm often asked, what are the building blocks of the public sector as it moves forward? And I've said these words many times in forums like this, and I remind myself of why I'm actually pursuing an idea and why do you keep having the energy? Why hasn't it killed you off yet, I like to challenge. I think someone talked about vulnerability this morning. For them, vulnerability is taking off shoes and exploring. For other people, vulnerability looks different. We're all vulnerable, and it's actually being comfortable with that vulnerability, to challenge firstly yourself and others, to create, and most important is to reimagine, and that is that vision. My role and my office's role is about unlocking our workforce's potential, and in fact, I often say that the only thing that we have that's of the most significance in the public sector are the people that serve it. There are over 100,000, I'm not going to give the number, I'll be quoted on that as well, but there are over 100,000 people. How we do things is through those people. We need to tap into different perspectives. People all come with different perspectives. Don't expect that there might be groupthink because it's what they see, but we need to unlock all those different value sets. And I think it was mentioned, driving sector-wide reform is the only way we will make a difference, and we need to connect with people that are outside of the sector that have great ideas, rather than us saying, look, no, that's not going to work in the public sector. What we can do is actually help people understand the complexity, because it is a complex system, and how we actually navigate that complex system. But while big picture thinking can be exciting, making it a reality can be very difficult. Many of us here today, and I know I see the nodding, understand red tape. The mindset of that's how it's always been done, you can't do it, the rules say you can't. It's that resistance to change, and I don't believe people actually do it just because they resist change. It's because there's a belief in their head that there is no other way. And I think the role of Commissioner helps me kind of go, well, yes, those rules might be there, but they're merely a guideline. We can actually work around that to get a better outcome. So you need leaders that can actually do that. Because staying the same can be familiar and very comfortable, and that's the bit about change. So in my 30 years in the public service, I've found the challenges to enhance and transform our workforce often requires ways of rethinking and nurturing that creativity, and all the while your intuition about whether something's right or not right. And I always have the values and code close to me. You know, you live by those values, you need to kind of, it will give you some sort of temperature gauge about what you're doing. A few years ago, the Institute of Public Administration Australia released the Shaping the Future through Co-Creation report. One of the recommendations for leaders was to not only support innovation, but recognise the role of innovation champions in the public service. We have our own name, we are intrapreneurs. And while on any given day we might be tied up in paperwork, we're trying to reduce that, we must hold this true. And there are some people here that created that group, and many, the hundreds were getting together. We're all here today. I truly believe to be adaptable, outward facing, we must keep reconnecting with that purpose. We must keep collaborating to find different ways of doing things. We need to help each other navigate those complexities. Even one small positive change can have a really big impact. And I often say to people when they say, look, it just can't work, it's too big an organisation, change what you have influence to change around you, but don't accept the norm if it's not going to get you where it needs to go. We're here today at Southstart because we wanted to shake things up. It was actually a chance meeting with Craig and myself, and then sort of why isn't the public sector involved in this? We're innovative, we need to be part of it. That's how we're here. We wanted to push through the boundaries to embrace and be empowered by the creative spirit to unleash our workforce. There are 100,000 dedicated South Australians working in the public sector who strive to make a difference, providing services to the community to enrich our lives in different ways. We need to deliver the government and state priorities and the services, but to do that, we do need diverse, innovative and collaborative public service workforce. We can't do it the way we're doing it now. My office partners with agencies to drive performance, culture and leadership across our public sector, and that's great, but more needs to be done to disrupt it. I'm passionate about helping people work with purpose and positively contribute to our state, but we can only do this if we actually work as a team. I want to talk a bit about the survey I did. So for many, many years, I actually thought it's absolutely important to ask the staff how they're feeling about working in the public sector. For a whole lot of reasons, I wasn't able to do that. Some of them might have been political, where it was in the political cycle. This is the complexity. But you've got to be persistent, because last year I managed to do that. It was early in a political cycle, blame someone else. However, it gave me a much better, gauge for what the public sector was actually thinking. And that's risky, but we did it, and it mattered to us. So that was one thing around my own tenacity and my desire to find out what was actually happening. And we actually have to create some change from the feedback that we got. So it's actually become quite a personal journey for me. You can create meaningful change, but you actually need to know what people are feeling, because you might be going on the wrong path. So you need to understand, if it's me, it's the people that work in the public service. If it's our community, it's what do they want in terms of services from us and how do they want it. But like with anything, it was unknown and it was feared, and it was actually put on the sort of the bottom of the to-do list in particular to get any feedback from the public sector. It was my own team of people and the whole public sector that backed this idea, and we now have basically the plan of the office is actually based on the feedback that we received from that actual survey. And it's been a year since that launch, and we've actually done some amazing things around wellbeing, mental health, diversity and inclusion. There are people that are marginalised within our own sector with a disability, Aboriginal people, cultural unawareness, people's mental health and wellbeing. These things, the human element of, I guess, you cannot be creative, you cannot move forward if you're stuck somewhere, whether it's personal or work, in a zone where these things are actually not being addressed. And poor leadership that's not addressing it. So we're working on every front in relation to that. I'm also delighted to actually, and I mentioned Charles, we have been working with the City of Adelaide, and we've partnered with the City of Adelaide. Claire's here today. You would all recall the Splash idea. We are now talking about creative bureaucracies. We had 90-day projects that we spearheaded. I have some teams here, people that were involved in that. That was a small group of people in the public service basically coming together and creating change, and we did it. Charles was really our first thinker in residence, I believe, or one of the first, that looked at creative cities. And we started to connect to say, well, the economic vibrancy of the city actually happens with lots of public servants drinking coffee, which we love, and coming together. And it was where all of that merged together. No one actually said, Erma, go have a partnership. So we got to know Margie, who works with Charles, and Claire, who's at the council. We've all got together, and we've actually been working together for quite a long time around a concept of a creative bureaucracy. A concept, and Charles will talk more about it, that actually has taken off across the world. That concept started in South Australia. It was because we were doing things differently. We're small enough to actually do that within the public sector for someone like Charles from the UK to take it across and talk about it, and he's even written a book about it, but I won't steal his thunder. He will talk about it a bit further. What we were pioneering was really creativity. So how do you unlock, we're all humans, you can be an entrepreneur, you can be an intrapreneur, but we're all humans. What taps into that creativity for individuals and the complexity that public servants have? Charles will talk a bit about the project, so we're on another path. So we have, over the next little while, we're hoping to have some sort of festival or celebration this time next year, where we will talk about a creative bureaucracy. If the world can do it, if Berlin can do it, South Australia can do it. Thank you, Charles, we'll do that. We want to really work backwards and actually find out what's working well, what can we do, what's the next platform, how can we hand the baton over to someone else, new ideas, so we can actually keep building from the platform that we started. So the first stage of the project is going to focus on programs and people and ideas, and we hope you're all part of that, how we position South Australia for the future. And Jim, the challenge for us is how do we connect in with the Innovation Hub and all the other things that we're actually doing. So with all of this in mind, I encourage you all to soak up today, learn, collaborate and create, as I started. Open your mind to new ideas, ignite your creative spirit. I did when that opening happened. I thought, it was really good for people to show their own vulnerability and feel it. So I think we need to be doing that more. You're all here today because you want to drive that positive change. You wouldn't be here otherwise. And when we work as a team, absolutely anything is possible. Thank you.